It is time to start, okay. So a number of announcements and whatnot. Chapter 6 has been posted, right? So you can do chapter 6 and it's due Sunday night, and then the final exam has been posted as well. So you can do that. I forget what the deadline is, but it's sometime during finals week. It says what it says. There's one more extra credit opportunity, and that is next Monday at 1 to 2:15. You can come to my philosophy of religion course and sit in for a lecture on Judaism by Rabbi George. It's for informational purposes, and you can get 3 extra credit points that way. And then also today, if you had brought in some sample fallacies, you can turn those in for extra credit. Okay. People who have done the chapter 6 test already have done really well. I don't know, but so let me talk about the final for a moment and let you know what the format is. It is available for download right now. Okay, there's several sections to it. The first part is arguments and non-arguments. And so that's just, hey, read this passage and tell me if it's an argument or if it's a non-argument. If it is an argument, you have to identify the conclusion. That's nothing new. We've done that a million times. If it's a non-argument, you have to tell me which kind of non-argument it is. And we have conditional statement by itself, explanation of a commonly accepted claim, report of an argument, or no particular claim is supported by evidence, okay? So those are, there's 2 questions on that, and those are worth 5 points each. Part 2, we assume that we have an argument, and now your job is to tell me whether it's inductive or deductive. There's 2 of those are worth 5 points each. On an inductive, we have analogies, generalizations, predictions, or the use of probability, cause and effect reasoning, appeal to authority, and to a scientific law. A couple of things to say about those. Remember, we are very specific by what we mean by a generalization in this class. A generalization is a claim about a population based on a sample of that population, okay? And then also, I said that we have, as an inductive argument type, we have to a scientific law, okay? How do you know whether it's inductive or deductive? When it's to a scientific law, the law is the conclusion, okay? If the law is used as a premise, that'd be from a scientific law, and that would be deductive. Other deductive argument types are arguments based on definitions, arguments based on mathematical or geometric reasoning, argument from scientific law, which I already mentioned, and then we also have arguments based on the argument, or deductive arguments based on its form, right? That was the component that we added in chapter 4. I have the argument forms that you're responsible for listed. There's only 5 of them, so you just have to make sure that the argument doesn't fall into one of those forms, or if it does, say, hey, deductive by virtue of its form. And that's just modus ponens, modus tollens, disjunctive syllogism, hypothetical syllogism, and simple dilemma. So those are some of the very basic ones, okay? All right, so that's that part. The next part is translations. That's when we took an ordinary English sentence and converted it into a symbolic notation, okay? Remember, you have to use enough parentheses to make sure I can determine what the main logical operator is. Otherwise, it's not a well-formed formula. There's only 2 tricky parts to translation. One is dealing with conditionals, if-then statements, because you have to figure out which part of the sentence is the antecedent and which part is the consequent. In other words, which part goes in front of the horseshoe and which part goes behind the horseshoe. we have our general rule, whatever follows if is the antecedent, unless it's an only if, in which case that would be the consequent, okay? And also there's a section in the textbook that lists the if-then operators, the conditional operators, and it tells you the relative location of the antecedent and the consequent. So you can always look it up, okay? What else was I going to say about conditionals? Oh, if and only if is not a conditional, it is a biconditional. So don't confuse it for a conditional. Okay, oh, and there was one other tricky thing dealing with translations, and that was or, okay? We have two kinds of ors. We have inclusive ors, that means one or the other or both, okay? And when that's what kind of or is being expressed, you just use this symbol, okay? But then we also have an exclusive or, which is one or the other, but not both, okay? We don't have a symbol for exclusive or, so we have to write it out this long way. We say this or that, but not both of them at the same time. So if you read an or and you say, wait a minute, that's an exclusive or, then you need to spell it out like this. If it's inclusive, you just do this. Everybody understand that? Okay. So there's two translations. Those are worth 5 points each. Okay. Now, you are currently taking the Chapter 6 test on fallacies, okay? So it's a little unfair to give you more fallacies to identify on the final exam since you haven't gotten any feedback. So I do have some questions about fallacies, but they're different. So what it is there were a number of fallacies that seemed like they were easy to confuse one for the other, okay? For example, the fallacy of composition and division. I always get those backwards. I can't remember which one is which. So what I do on this fallacy section is I give you two fallacies and you have to tell me what they are and how they're different. Does everybody understand that? And that's in your own words. Of course, you can look in the book and see how they're described there, but you have to put them in your own words, and including an example is very helpful. Okay, so there's two of those. Those are worth 5 points each. Okay. Okay. Then we had the basic truth table, where you have to know, the truth functions of conjunctions, disjunctions, conditionals, and whatnot, based on the truth values of their parts. Okay, that's a 10-point section, and gosh darn it, you can copy and paste that right out of the book if you know where to find it, right? So that's 10 free points right there, okay? After that, though, you have two problems where you have to determine whether the argument is valid or invalid by truth tables. You remember that? Okay. So there's two of those, and in general, remember the strategy. You try to prove that the argument is invalid, and if you can't, then it's valid, okay? When would it be invalid? You find a case where the conclusion is false and the premises are all true. Does everybody understand that? So a line, an interpretation, where all the premises come out to be true, but the conclusion is false. That shows that it's invalid, okay? So you have two of those, and you gotta make sure you know how to fill in all the possible truth values, okay? And there's formulas in the book and everything that explain how to do that, okay? And those two proving validity by truth table, those were 10 points each. So you really need to make sure you can do that, because that's a lot of points. Okay, that's worth 20 points. And then we have two proofs. That's the chapter 5 stuff, okay? They are relatively basic. So if you pass the chapter 5 test, you need not panic. If you completely bombed it, you're gonna need to brush up on that stuff. And the way that I would brush up on it is, since I posted the chapter 5 test with the answers, what I would do is I'd print out the chapter 5 test without the answers and then do the problems over and over. And if you're getting stuck or whatnot, you're gonna come see me in office hours and we're gonna figure it out, okay? But the problems are pretty basic, the proofs. You have 2 of those, they're worth 10 points each. So in terms of the final and what is most important to know, and that's validity by truth tables, because that's worth 20%, and the proofs, that's worth 20%. That's 40% of your test, so you've got to know those things. Now, if you can't find the solution to the proofs, what do? You always give me as many legal moves as you can, right? And then you can get partial credit, because 5 out of 10 is a whole lot better than 0 out of 10. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Then, the last section, and this is different from anything we've ever done before, and that is you have to match concepts to their descriptions, okay? And these are really key concepts. You probably shouldn't have to look them up, right? Like, what is a tautology? You should probably know that by now. So these are terms that everyone should know after taking this class, and you just have to match the term up with its description, okay? We haven't ever done anything like that before, but I needed to put 10 more points into the test, and that was the easy way to do it. Does everybody understand that? So today is our last day of class, but I did say that we would have a review. I think I said it would be on next Tuesday. Is that right? Okay. So that is dead day, so it's not a lecture, but you can come here during regular class time, and I'll be here for questions and answers. Does everybody understand that? Now, if people aren't showing up, I'll be in my office, right? If a bunch of people show up, we'll come here, okay? So go to my, come here. If I'm not here, you can find me in my